Welcome to Wisdom Journey, the podcast where we explore the path of building an online business from the ground up. Here, I share my wins, struggles, lessons, and experiments so you can learn, adapt, and grow alongside me. I also interview experts in their respective field. Whether you're just starting out or looking for new strategies to scale, this is your space to find inspiration and practical wisdom. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I'm excited to take you on today's journey. Today on Wisdom Journey, we're joined by James Lang, managing partner at Overlang Venture Partners. Before launching his venture firm, James served as CEO of a MedTech startup, generating over $20 million in revenue while building and leading a global team of 60. Now, through Overlang Venture Partners, he is helping American companies implement AI the smart way, not as a buzzword, but as a scalable infrastructure that enhances human capital instead of replacing it. Today, we'll break down what sustainable AI really means and why most AI startups are already doomed and how to build companies that last. Welcome to the podcast, James.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. I want us to step back a bit. You grew up in a military family in Virginia Beach. How did that shape your discipline and leadership style?
Yeah, I think one of the cool things about growing up as a military brat is you really appreciate what it means to be of service. And, the people that you're around for the most part are other people who share those values. They're making the same sacrifice to serve their country. And, it's not just the person who's actually in the military that serves, the family serves as well. Um, so, there's a lot of really good values that you get out of that experience. And if anything, though, I think I had to unlearn more than I had learned, or more than I've kept with me, I should say. There's a sense of discipline, a sense of rigidity to the military. In the entrepreneurial world, it doesn't work quite like that. It's far more flexible, and you got to work with the opportunities you have.
Wow. What did you learn about structure and execution early in life that later showed up in business?
So I'm a big fan of biographies, and one of them is Eisenhower's biography that I read. One of the things in there he talked about at length was the fact that, they spent months and months preparing for D-Day. And it wasn't because they knew everything that was going to happen. It wasn't because they knew, exactly how the battle would unfold. It's because they wanted to know where all of their resources were, all the people were, all the personnel. So when something unexpected did occur, they didn't have to go looking for things. They already knew where everything was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And more importantly, where everything had been. So if it got lost in the way, along the way, they knew where it was in between. They had a good idea of that. So, it's really interesting. Like, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that space for entrepreneurship. It's you plan, you think on paper, you look for ways to connect the dots, bring the right people together to accomplish the goal. But you have to also recognize that no plan survives the first moment of actual execution.
Wow. You scaled a MedTech company to $20 million plus. What was your first real this is breaking moment as CEO?
So not alone, I had an amazing team, and we had a lot of ups and downs, but I served in a few different roles in the company. When I exited, I was the COO. What I would say is the most important thing I learned is everybody has their own style. Everyone has their own lived experiences, their own perspective. And when you bring a group together to try to accomplish a goal, what you're trying to do, if you're in a leadership role, is it's not your job to talk the most. In fact, the best leaders I've ever worked with spent more time listening than talking. They want to absorb all the information from the various perspectives and various viewpoints that are out there. But then when they do interject, it's normally with a question. And that question helps shape the group's conversation. So as I learned to lead, as I promoted through the company, for me, it was not always the easiest path. It was a pretty tough path, but at the same time, there's so many lessons you take away from those challenges, and being able to look at it from different perspectives at different levels in the organization, and understanding, why something is being acted upon by leadership versus frontline versus support staff. Those are all different perspectives with different viewpoints on things. And so being able to speak from every perspective and provide the why behind the what, not only did we get better outcomes out of our people, but we also allowed them to learn. And I found that as a person, wherever you are in life, if you learn the why behind what you're being asked to do and you understand the why, that's the fastest way to jump up to the next level. Because The people who do the work for the people that know why.
Oh, and when you stepped into the CEO role, what was the metric that mattered most to you weekly?
So that's a tough one to answer because when you in the COO role, your role is not to dictate what direction the ship goes in. Your job is to make sure that the shareholders and all of the drama happening at the shareholder level does not really seep down into the 60 or so people you have working for you. And whether that team's 30 people or 60 people, I've led both. The challenge is, how do you create an environment for everyone to succeed? So one of my KPIs was obviously revenue and profitability, but also retention and figuring out a way to make it easier for people to onboard. Like, for example, we used Upwork very heavily
Yeah.
to recruit different contractors, which allowed us to test people out, trial them out. And then eventually, if they were working out really well, we would offer them full-time positions. But doing that the right way is kind of difficult. You have to be able to instill your culture in the people that are coming in with all of their own baggage and their own experiences. But at the same time, you don't want to take away that unique perspective, that spark that they have.
Yeah.
So I'd say retention would be the KPI that I'm most proud of, outside of people who were terminated for fraud or doing something bad. It's amazing. People you would trust with keys to your house. Sometimes when you look underneath the surface, you discover they're not the people you thought they were.
Well, you know, yeah, as someone who has scaled a MedTech company to 20 million plus revenue, what is the biggest misconception founders have about scaling?
Well, I think that a lot of people focus on the vanity items. Let's get a better office. Let's get a better whatever it is. Let's make ourselves look the part. If you're worried about the trappings of your office or how fancy things are, you're missing the point. The shareholders and the people who care about the business, they don't really care about how nice the office is. They care, do the people have what they need to succeed, and are costs being controlled and managed well? Because you can outsell a bad quarter, but you can't outsell overrunning costs. So, looking at that profitability gap, understanding what your return rate is, understanding why the returns are happening, getting all that data. So your quality management team becomes very important in understanding, why are we getting these returns? Why are these devices failing, for example? So all of that, everyone thinks about making the sale, but a lot of people forget to focus on what happens after the sale. And so that's one of the key things in maintaining profitability, is keeping the product sold once it's sold.
Well, keeping the product sold once it's sold. That's like the basic definition of retention. Um, you,
Yeah.
when I read in the intro, I talked about, the work you're doing with AI, and you've said that 90% of AI startups are already doomed. That's a bold statement. Why do you say that?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, so Overlang Venture Partners, when we formed this about a year ago, our goal was to build an organization that was like every business's best friend. Like, let's take the best marketing, the best operational excellence, the best technology. Let's take all these things and give them to the average business out there that chooses to work with us, become kind of their non-equity partner in their business. And the problem with that is, we discovered this problem where, AI, when we tried to use AI to create these conversational funnels, um, just putting the test traffic through those funnels cost us over $800 in compute. And that's because we were actually going through and doing it raw with AWS and then a few other add-ons. And what I learned is unbelievably expensive. Compute in the AI space is just unbelievably expensive. And there's a couple factors impacting that. One is the fact that everybody can create something with AI. So the number of things being created, the number of startups, the cycle of startups is so much faster paced now, that you have such a demand for this technology, this resource, this limited amount of silicon out there. But the other thing that people aren't thinking about is the amount of power these devices consume. So even if all these companies build out more silicon, more hardware, more server space, whatever the case may be, is there enough power in the community to charge all of that and keep it running at full tilt? And the answer in most communities is no, they're at capacity. It's all they can do. I mean, you have Microsoft literally reactivating a nuclear reactor to power some of their new servers.
Yeah.
So, there's this huge demand for server capacity, But it's not just a hardware problem, it's also a power problem. And so for us, what we discovered in that moment was you kind of have two choices as a company. You can buy something off the shelf that's being subsidized by all this money flowing into AI that you're going to pay a little bit less than you would pay if you were doing it yourself, but it's not perfectly designed for your company.
Yeah.
Whereas if you build it yourself, if you create the infrastructure, so create that closed walled garden infrastructure that you own as a company, you're not renting AI from somebody else. You're using your own technology. And that means when you exit, you still own everything that you've built. And most importantly, you own your data.
Yeah.
Because when you send all these API calls to all these AI providers, in order for them to try and shrink costs as much as possible, they're caching that information on the server.
Yeah.
And that means that you have a copy of your data out there with somebody else. And maybe they're good people and maybe they're honest and they scrub it when they say they do. But what if they don't?
Yeah.
And do you really want that information out there? So in order to protect your data, but also allow your AI solution to have full context, connect into all those data islands, you need to own your own AI infrastructure. And so when we ran into that problem where we're like, where's this $800 bill coming from just for testing some things through a funnel we built?
Yeah.
All of a sudden we went offline. We said, okay, we're going to pause here for about 6 months. And we spent that time really figuring out how to build these systems in partnership with Amazon to allow for companies, for small businesses to create these infrastructures that they own in the cloud that, when the company sells, they can sell it along with the company to make the exit more valuable. But also they don't have those same security concerns when things go out to other vendors. So, this is an area of expertise that we developed, and we already had the talent in house. Thankfully, my business partner, Jeff, he's incredibly well versed in AI and big data. He's been in the industry for 7 years. And so I'm the dumb one in the group. I'm learning along with everyone else, trying to figure out, what the heck is all this?
Yeah.
And then how do I translate it to make it make sense for the clients that we work with? So that's been the journey. And we've just accidentally become this AI company. And in the last week or so, we've decided that we're just going to double down on that and just continue to offer those types of solutions to businesses to give them more value at exit and to give them more capability in the short term.
When you say sustainable AI, what do you mean?
So what I'm referring to is, you've probably seen the headlines about ChatGPT, OpenAI, all these guys dealing with the cash crunch. All this VC money went into AI. They didn't really have to worry about costs in the beginning. It was a race to the finish line. And now we're reaching the point in the race where all of a sudden investors are more worried about returns than opportunity. And so that means they're going to have to crank up their costs. And so when I talk about sustainable AI, sure, there's conversations around environmental policy and everything else, but I'm more focused on, if you're a business owner, are you going to wake up tomorrow and find out that AI solution you've been relying on, they ran out of money. They couldn't pay their bills. So all of a sudden all your data is gone. Or are you going to discover that you have this really big bill from them because some term in the terms and conditions said that they could raise the rates if the rate of the token cost went up, or whatever the case may be. All of those things are threats for these businesses, and it makes AI less sustainable. So that's a really important aspect. Cost is a really important aspect of AI sustainability. And one other piece of AI sustainability is in your people. So when you kind of throw a poorly formed AI solution onto your team, your top performers, the first thing they're going to do, they're going to start looking to polish up their resumes and start looking for other jobs because they've been reading in the news, AI is coming for your job. AI is going to take away your job. And so the minute they see this AI thing that kind of doesn't make a lot of sense, but the boss wants it, so we're going to use it, they're starting to think, okay, I better get ahead of this. I'm going to be replaced by AI. Where our approach is we first figure out all of the things about the business we need to know to build a solution that actually works for the business and reflects their culture, all the things that made them successful, and more importantly, makes their people more valuable and more secure. Because if you can 10x the value of an employee, you're going to hire more employees. The AI isn't taking jobs, it's changing jobs.
Yeah.
So if people are unwilling to change, not much I can do for you. But if you're willing to learn and understand how to use these new tools, which are actually easier to use than any other tool we've ever had to adapt to, you're going to make a lot more money and be a lot more secure in your job.
Hey, quick break. Before we continue, I'd love for you to join the Wisdom Journey newsletter. Every week, I share exclusive insights, tools, and behind-the-scenes updates to help you stay ahead in your own journey of building an online business. It's simple, practical, and built to help you grow. Sign up today for free at the link in the description. Now let's get back to the episode.
Wow. When does AI, create leverage, and when does it create chaos?
So it creates leverage when it actually solves real problems. If you have imaginary problems or things that you think might be problems in the future, and you're using AI to try to solve those things, doesn't make a lot of sense to solve tomorrow's problems in the present.
Yeah.
You've got to deal with the present's problems first, and then you can worry about, adjusting your AI foundation. Too many people are looking for a solution that works in like 1 or 2 days. For us, when we build out these AI solutions for our partners, it takes at least 2 months for the AI to learn everything it needs to learn to understand the uniqueness of the company. And so one of the things that we've put a lot of time and effort into is creating what I call like a third base coach. Basically, the business owner in real time can give feedback to the AI and say, hey, I liked this, I didn't like this, here's why. Most platforms don't allow you to do that. They require you to submit a ticket,
Yeah.
reach out to somebody or talk to your AI guy and see if you can figure it out. And the problem is these AI consultants that, they're experts on real estate last week and Bitcoin before that, they don't know what they're talking about. They're just selling you a product. And when you have a problem with it, they're not going to be there to take your call and give you genuine support.
Wow. You talked about having, internal AI tools. That way you get to own your data and you're not at the mercy of an AI company shutting down or increasing cost. What does an AI infrastructure, practically speaking, look like for a mid-sized company?
Yeah. So what it looks like is it's going to live, at least if you work with us, it's going to live in AWS, which is one of the most reliable systems in the world and most secure. It's going to be HIPAA compliant, SOC 2 compliant. So all of your stuff is secure. But it's going to have inside of it, within the walled garden, you have your vectored data, which is your knowledge base, and
Yeah.
it's vectored so that it's easier for the AI to understand it, so it doesn't cost as much in compute. Then you're going to have connections to all of your data on, so your email, your computer hard drives, Slack, text messages if you want, anything that you can think of. There's probably a way to connect it either directly or indirectly with your AI solution. So the connections are really important because that's what gives it context. So there's knowledge, there's context, and then there's processing. Processing is a really important topic because most people don't realize that there's literally hundreds, if not thousands at this point, of publicly available AI models, whether those are older models or maybe one generation old from the other companies that are out there, or they're things that have been created separately. What we've done is we've picked about a dozen of those AI models that are out there. And so we have inside of a wrapper, we can plug and play different AI systems into that engine based on the task that's being done. And that helps keep costs lower. And then as you look at agentic AI, you have a team of basically AI bots that work for you, but you have your more expensive AI bots that are able to handle really complex tasks. You have your middle bots, which are, they're able to handle new things, but they're not as fast at it. And then below that, you have your worker bee, just low cost bots in terms of computer resource. Those guys just handle the repetitive things. And so what we build out, once we get everything connected and get the knowledge base updated, and of course, things get added to the knowledge base every day, but as it grows and learns, it also does a look back to see what it was asked to do and figure out if there's a cheaper way to route those tasks between the different agents to accomplish it. So like a bad day for us is we wake up and, in my email, I'll have an email from our AI saying, hey, it costs us about $80 in compute to do everything we need to do yesterday, which is still pretty cheap. But what it'll say next is, based on a look back and understanding how things were done, I've adjusted the routing for some of these tasks so that tomorrow, if we had to do the exact same thing over again, it would only cost $30 or $40.
Yeah.
So, there's big optimizations that occur if you set it up correctly, but there's so many different ways to configure things within AWS or any of these AI hosting platforms. If you get things wrong, you're going to slow down the process and make it more expensive. So that's why part of our secret sauce is the fact that we've made these millions of connections internally within these systems. We've made them the right way in a way that's efficient, so it doesn't result in a ton of extra overhead. And so that's more the technical side. What the customer sees is generally 2 different user interfaces, maybe 3. So if it's 3 interfaces, it would be your executive leadership, your AI acts as a thought leader, or a thought partner, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You need to be the thought leader. You have to be the human in charge. But you can go to the AI and say, hey, do I need to hire more customer service reps? And it will go in and look at things, not only in terms of what the wait time is or the handle time is on things, but also understanding where your people are spending the most time solving problems, because it has access to all those data islands. And it'll say something to you like, maybe in 2 months you need to hire another customer service rep, but you probably wouldn't need to, at least not as soon, if you automated this task, and this task.
Yeah.
So it not only tells you the answer to your question, but gives you some additional context that would have taken hours to research yourself and try to compile a report. So that's the speed up part for the executives, for the leadership. For the frontline employees, they get access to a different user interface that gives them all the information relevant to their job so that they can get everything they're doing done a little bit easier. So if you've got somebody who's managing your fleet, you can see when the trucks are coming up due for maintenance, or get ahead of different things that might be affecting, like weather and other variables that the AI is constantly searching for and figuring out. It's not going to do it for you in terms of, it's not going to go fix the truck,
Yeah.
but it's going to let you know that, hey, you might want to be aware of this, rather than you find out, the day after your truck goes down.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of really valuable tools there. And then you have the customer facing user interface. So let's say somebody wants to self-serve. They don't want to wait in line for an agent, a human agent, to work with them. They can interact with the AI, get most things done, and if needed, can be escalated to a human. But it really reduces the amount of time your people spend doing these repetitive tasks that eat up their day.
Yeah. Well, earlier on you talked about, um, AI consultants, someone who did Bitcoin dropshipping yesterday, today they're AI consultants. There's a flood of AI consultants online. How can business owners filter competence from noise?
So you have to sit down with someone and have an in-depth conversation. And if they can't make the technology make sense to you, and they can't explain why certain things work a certain way, they're just salespeople. They're not involved in the actual development. Everyone that works with us talks to me personally at least a few times. And so we sit down, we go over what information we know about their company, we go over why we're building things out the way we're going to build them, and then we get feedback and we make adjustments as necessary. But if the person is just selling you something, this product will do this thing for you, it's probably bullshit. Because there's no such thing as the perfect off-the-shelf AI solution to do anything. You have to customize it. You have to know what you're buying and be able to tweak it to get what you want. The one exception to that, I think, is probably something like Lovable, which we use quite a bit for our front end designs for user interfaces. So when we talk to customers, if I'm on the phone with somebody and they say, I'd really like it to do this and it should look like this, I can go in Lovable and get it to make a front end that looks good. And I can show them that front end in real time and say, is this what you had in mind? And then I can send that information over to our team and have them build it. So that's where tools like that, Lovable is going to work if you know how to work it, but it's not going to build a website for you. It's going to follow your lead. So you have to know how to prompt it and other things. So I love tools like Lovable because they allow you to take what's in your head or in the conversation and turn it into something visual in real time.
Yeah.
But again, those things aren't going to build it for you. Or if they do, it's going to be horribly inefficient and horribly insecure. So I don't recommend hosting a bunch of really sensitive data like credit card numbers or personally identifiable information. Those things should not be put into databases and systems that were created by AI that you do not understand.
Yeah.
You need to understand how things were built before you trust them.
Yeah, well, and you talked about, having conversations with these AI consultants. What are some questions founders should ask before hiring an AI consultant?
Yeah, really get a sense for what part that person played in the journey of creating the solution they're recommending. If what they're telling you is, well, you have this problem, and I think this thing, and this thing will solve it all for you, ask them why they think that. Challenge that. Don't assume that they're an expert. And listen for the things that you would listen to if you were buying a car and you wanted to know more about that car, something that you understand. There's parallels there. You can figure out if people are full of shit because the minute they start to try to explain complex things, they're going to either try to avoid the conversation or come up with these really short little answers. You have to really dig into the tech. And if someone says to you, I don't know for sure, let me go talk to my team, that's a good sign. That means you're dealing with somebody who actually wants to give you the right answer. If instead, magically, the person you're talking to has every answer in the world, no matter how technical you get, then I question that, because nobody is an expert on AI right now. It's changing too fast.
Yeah.
We're all learning as fast as we can. We're all trying to keep up. But there's some guiding principles that you can use, because AI is created in our image. It's made by humans to act like humans. If you understand that, you can approach AI in a really competent way that protects your data and your information. It's no different than hiring an employee.
Well, based on the AIs in companies, what would you say is the most expensive mistake you see companies make when it comes to AI?
Well, it's two things. One, it's they're trusting all of their data and their resources to some other entity that they have no real
Yeah.
direct relationship with. So do you trust all the people involved in that pipeline? Do you understand the pipeline of where all your data is being sent and where it's being stored? So that's one piece. The other piece is they're kind of renting instead of owning. They're renting the API call and the AI solution. They're paying the token costs that are, inflated because the company that you're paying has to make money.
Yeah.
Um, but you don't actually own the solution. So when you go to sell your company, part of what you're going to say is, well, we use this tool for this and this tool for that. Well, you don't own any of it. You can't sell that tool.
Yeah.
Where if you own your own infrastructure and it's built properly so that it can be future proofed and upgraded over time, you own something of value that when you do exit, you can massively increase the value of your company, because they don't have to keep paying subscription fees to all these other vendors. You're actually selling them the solution.
Well, I like that, and it also increases the worth of the company, because now you have your own original data, you have your own custom
Exactly.
softwares and everything, and so it's not just, oh, we're selling customers. It's like it's a full package.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to be able to solve the problems that are real, and we have to be able to adapt to problems that emerge.
Yeah. Well, if someone listening runs a $2 to $5 million company, what's the first AI move they should make?
Well, besides talk to me, that's our ideal customer.
Yeah.
We deal with a lot of companies in that range, and primarily our customers lately have been coming from the medical space, the legal space, and the 3PL space. The first move you need to make with AI is you need to make it part of your daily life. So there are many things you do in your personal life that if you did them in partnership with AI, you would move faster through your day. But we're humans. We don't like change. We want to keep doing things the way we've always done them.
Yeah.
Find different things in your life. Challenge yourself to find one reason to use ChatGPT every day. That's the most accessible form of AI.
Well,
And then that extends into your business. But you're going to learn, you're going to become prompt savvy, because prompting is like a second language. And if you don't speak the prompting language, you're not going to get what you want out of AI. And the best way to learn is by trying to get an outcome that you desire out of the AI and learning how to do that. So there's lots of low-cost ways to do that, but you need to be personally fluent in AI and agentic AI before you start talking to other people at random that you meet on LinkedIn.
yeah.
And this is the conversation we have with so many of our partners that come aboard is, what do you understand? Where can we fill in your knowledge gaps? Because if the person you're talking to doesn't have the heart of a teacher, they're just a salesperson.
Yeah. Well, based on the AI and the advancement of technology, what business models will win in the next 5 years because of AI?
I want to make sure I understood the question. So you're saying, or you're asking what business models are going to work best over the next 5 years? Is that your question?
Yeah, because of AI, they're going to be at a high advantage.
I have no idea. Anybody that claims to know the answer to that question, they're full of it. They're guessing. But I'll give you my guess, which is all it is a guess. But I would say industries that deal with complex scenarios are going to benefit the best. So look at the legal field. When you're arguing a case before a judge, you're not just arguing the law, you're also trying to appeal to that judge's innate biases, the things that they respond well to. And so AI is amazing at hoovering up all this data and coming up with angles and things that never occurred to you. You have to chase them down and check them yourself. You can't just trust AI to blindly be followed. There's plenty of lawyers getting in trouble for that by filing these different briefs that don't make sense. And the thing that happens with AI is just a butt-kissing employee. It wants to make you happy. It wants to have every answer you're ever looking for.
Yeah.
So the reason it hallucinates is not because it's lying, but it's trying its best to give you the answer to succeed at the mission you've given it. So one of the things in prompting that I like to do a lot is I take a 3-phase approach to my prompts. I'll say, for example, earlier today, I was working on just a quick video that I posted on my LinkedIn. So I said, you're an expert in LinkedIn posts.
Yeah.
Your job is to take this idea that I wrote out a rough draft of and turn it into a really good script. And then also give me an excerpt that I should write into the post. So when I share the video, there's text to go along with it. Now I took that information into those 3 parts. What are you? Because AI is a blank slate. You got to tell it what it is. What do you want? And then what should the final product look like? If you give it those 3 things, you're going to get more out of AI in your prompting than you would otherwise. So that's why I say for complex tasks, imagine if I'm a lawyer and I'm asking, hey, you're an attorney with 20 years of experience.
Yeah.
Your job is to look at all these judges' rulings and figure out what things they respond well to and what things they do not respond well to, and use that as kind of like a first draft of your thought process. So, look at all the information it provides you. It's kind of like a research assistant. But if you use it correctly and you verify it yourself as a human, you're going to be able to get really good information out of it. And at the same time, be able to know when it's wrong and when it's correct, and be able to fast track your process. So it's really about taking complex problems, complex things, and making them easier to process without them being as taxing on the human brain.
Wow. I like that. Can you for sure say the businesses that are about to become obsolete?
So I look back at the 1920s and 1950s and 1980s. So those 3 kind of time windows. If you look at companies that existed back then, not many of those companies still existed at 1950 or 1980. And a lot of the companies built in 1950 had changed or merged by 1980.
Yeah.
This isn't new. We're not dealing with anything new here. What we're dealing with is a new application of technology, and there will be changes to how jobs are done and how things are completed. The market will merge and pick winners and losers and all those things. It's no different than it's been in the past.
Yeah.
Again, the only difference is the level of technology and the level of, or the speed of the rate of change. It's happening very quickly. So if you're not already AI literate, if you're not already prompt literate, that should be your primary focus as an individual, because if you can't get there, it's like not knowing how to speak English and choosing to go into business and trying to communicate with your customer. Good luck.
Yeah. Well, if you had to build from scratch today with AI available, what would your 90-day strategy look like?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sit down and start to work on a rough concept of a business plan. So, what are the things that I'm passionate about? What are the things I enjoy doing? So there's so much bullshit you have to put up with as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. If you don't love the industry you're in,
Yeah.
you're probably not going to make it, because it takes about 2 years for something to go from an idea to actually being profitable.
Oh.
So you have to be willing to make that investment. But if you're using AI, you can probably shorten that cycle a little bit, but probably not by much, because the AI is going to change. You have to pay for the AI, that the resources you use and everything else, and you have to make sure that everything works the way it is. But at least the first 90 days, the first thing I'm doing is sitting down with ChatGPT or whatever your X or Grok or Gemini, whatever system you like, sitting down with those systems and asking it to interview me. Here's my idea. Just dump your brain into that prompt and say, you're an expert business consultant. Here's an idea, a rough idea that I have. Ask me 10 questions about this idea to understand my thought process and why it's important. And if you do that, AI will interview you and create a more contextual, really well thought out strategy that you can take as a first draft or a pre-draft, and then use that to fine tune your plan and fine tune the rough draft into something that you think makes sense, and then get to work from there. If you use AI as a thought partner, you're going to be able to get a lot more done and avoid a lot of mistakes, because it's going to offer you such a fresh perspective compared to what you've been thinking about. We have these brains, these meat computers that, they like to focus on one thing at a time, and they like to just kind of automate certain things. And, reality for each of us is what we think about, right? So if you're thinking about something and you're focused on, you're interpreting, even in this interview, you're interpreting hundreds of words, you're interpreting all this body language and everything else.
Yeah.
But the things that you focus on during this interview are the things you're going to remember when you think back to this interview.
Yeah.
You miss 99% of it. It's not in your memory bank. AI is going to give you those triggers, those prompts to get you to get out of your perspective, your take your blinders off and look at the problem from different perspectives and challenge you in a really healthy way. So that's the way I like to use AI, at least in the first 90 days. I want to create a plan, start executing on that plan, come up with KPIs to decide if there's success or failure. I'd rather fail fast than succeed slowly.
Wow.
So let's fail fast. Let's find all the wrong ways to do this.
Wow.
Let's prove that they're wrong. And then that way we can limit the number of things that we're going to actually invest time and energy into as we grow the team into the things we know work because we've been able to prove the theory.
Wow. I like the getting AI to interview you, to just dump all the ideas and eventually create a system for you and help you get into a business that you like, so that
One of my favorite books that talks about that does a much better job of communicating that concept than I do is Jeff Woods. He wrote a book called The AI Driven Leader.
oh,
And for me, when I was first getting into AI and understanding things, that was a great foundation because it was written from the perspective of somebody who was not an AI expert, but came into the field and learned how to leverage it at these large companies. So those types of things, there's so much knowledge out there. You really don't have to come up with much as a human. We have such access to information. And so if you just learn how to access that information better and challenge your biases, you're going to have better outcomes in life.
wow. You do have a statement called learn and earn. What does that mean at a practical level?
So learn and earn is my favorite phrase. It's probably tied with, success is progress. But those two things are kind of my mantras. So learn and earn when I was a freelancer and then I made the jump from going into an agency. And then when that agency was acquired by a company and then I moved into different roles in that company and eventually exited, all those things, every day I was learning new things, learning the why behind the what and building relationships and over delivering on value. So when somebody would hire me to do something, I would put in double the effort it probably took because I was trying to think about like, well, how can I make this easier for my boss? Or how could I make this a little bit more effective? And people notice that. They remember those who they ask you to do 1+1 and you do 1+1+1+1.
Yeah.
They're going to remember, wow, that person really made my life easier. And they didn't ask me for more money in the process.
Wow.
They'll remember that and they'll always come back to you. And so those are the relationships you build. And every promotion I've ever gotten is based on relationships with people where I over delivered and I was consistently reliable and constantly learning. If you do those things, if you learn and earn, you're going to do really well in life. And then the other piece is just to protect your mental health. You have to look at, you're not going to hit all of your goals. You're not going to win every race. But sometimes winning and succeeding is just progressing, just moving forward. So, if you focus on those types of mindsets, you're going to be able to keep going. You're not going to get burnt out as easily. And at the same time, you're going to be able to build relationships that make the next chapter even easier.
Well, building relationships that make the next chapter easier. And then you did recommend the book, The AI Driven Leader. Yeah, those are, so I do have recommendations to check out. Where can listeners learn more about the work you do and also work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best place to start is our website. It's Overlang, overlang.com. And then the other option is just look me up on LinkedIn. It's James Lang, Lang. I respond to every LinkedIn message I get. My goal is to provide value and give back to people who are maybe a little bit earlier in the process than me, and then also compare notes with people who are maybe further along in the process than me. So every person you run into in LinkedIn has some value and perspective that you can leverage without having to necessarily fall for all the sales gimmicks.
Yeah, I'll put the links mentioned in the description so the listeners can click and go there to the site. Once again, thank you so much for sharing your AI insights and for chatting with me. It's been a lovely conversation.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning into Wisdom Journey. I hope today's episode gave you practical steps and fresh ideas to keep moving forward. If you found value, be sure to subscribe and share this podcast with a fellow creator or entrepreneur who'd love to learn too. And don't forget to sign up for the newsletter and the link in the description for more resources, experiments, and lessons straight to your inbox. Until next time, keep building, keep learning, and keep walking your own wisdom journey. Yeah.